I don't really understand.
You do.
I don't understand. I've got to be honest with you. I don't understand the concept of what non-binary means, or why you would
Neither
use
do
a,
I, and
or
I'm
why you would
trans,
use a
neither do
plural
I.
pronoun to describe a singular person. That makes to me, this is the problem with the whole woke thing. Is that it's inexplicable. Nobody really knows what it means. I don't know what you mean by non-binary they them. There's one of you sitting here, and you look to me female. You're a female?
Okay.
Are you?
Piers Morgan asked one simple question, and the room went completely sideways, trying to get a straight answer. I'm Charlotte. This is the Charlotte Wire. This started as a conversation about free speech, about whether it's okay to incite violence against anyone, including transgender people, and about the treatment of Graham Linehan. But when Piers pressed for a direct, clear answer on basic terms being used in the debate, the conversation kept shifting instead of landing anywhere solid. Riley Gaines, still fresh off her own very public fight over fairness in women's sports, sat there watching the same pattern repeat that she has dealt with for years. People avoiding a direct answer to a direct question. If you want to see exactly where this conversation went off the rails and why it left Piers pushing harder and harder for something concrete, hit subscribe, because the Charlotte Wire brings you the moments that actually show how these debates play out live, unedited. Let's get into it.
Riley, you and I have talked a lot about this whole issue. It just seems to me what Malcolm Gladwell said is so significant, because he's basically done a complete U-turn on this and understood that even he, one of the smartest brains in the world, got kind of traduced into thinking it was perfectly normal and acceptable for a biological male identifying as a trans woman to compete in women's sport. You yourself, having lost out to a trans athlete in a swimming pool at a high level, understood immediately from that experience that men have superior biology to women. Therefore, if they compete against women, it is grotesquely unfair because they have superior muscle mass, power. Well, surely, hang on. I'll come to you in a second, Riley.
Sorry, I apologize.
Sorry, no, Laurie, just to be clear, you're not disputing men have superior biology, are you?
Superior, I just think it's quite offensive to say that an entire
Not really.
people have superior.
There's a reason in the Olympics we have women's sport and men's sport. It's because the men, if they competed against the women, would win everything. Do you understand that?
Okay, I just question your use of the word superior to describe male biology.
Superior biology, their biology, their physical biology means when they're competing in sport, they have superior biology. They have an advantage from their bodies. Do you understand? You accept that?
Let me clarify this. I think superior in strength and athleticism, typically.
Thank you.
And how far they jump and how high they can jump, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we're talking about biology, I'm about 38 weeks pregnant now, and I would certainly say that my biology compared to my husband's in that way is superior.
And I would agree with you. So why don't we just accept that what I was talking about was superior physical biology in terms of competing in sports. Men are faster, they're stronger, they have more lung capacity and so on. That is why we separate the sexes. That's what we should all agree.
110%. Yeah, I don't take offense to the word superior. Certainly, I believe there are things women are superior at, and certainly I believe there are things that men are superior at. I don't think this is something to, again, say that women are less than necessarily, but just to, again, reiterate the fact that women and men are very much different. I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that. And so to your point, Piers, this comment that was said by Michael, you said now he's come out and kind of done this full 180 here. I don't think he ever believed that women or that men should be in women's sports. He's just now finally courageous enough, if that's the word you can even use. It's amazing to me. It requires courage to publicly declare that men and women are different. What a sad state that we are living in, where it requires courage or bravery to say such. But that's the case that many, many people have felt over the past, I would certainly say 5-6 years. But as indicated, really, this has been going on much longer than that. So that's my thoughts on that. The majority of, I'll speak for the American people, the majority of American people, as proven by every single Gallup poll, whether even in states like California, I believe they had 40% of voters turn out in support of Donald Trump. Even still, I believe it was 70% of people said that men shouldn't be in women's sports. So this is like a no-brainer for most people. I want to go back really quickly to what we're talking about on the free speech side of things. If you can remember, Piers, I was physically attacked.
Yeah, you were.
like violently attacked by a mob of radical, psychotic, crazy trans activists who kidnapped me and held me hostage for 5 hours, all while our police force sat and did nothing, as they said they couldn't. They weren't allowed to, because they weren't allowed to be seen as anything other than an ally to that community, or else they would lose their jobs. So I absolutely and entirely reject the notion that there is a double standard that is in favor of people like me. That is not at all what we have seen. Again, people who unapologetically speak the truth.
No, what we've seen is people like you and J.K. Rowling and other women who put their head over the parapet to fight this battle to protect women's rights. And that's what the battle was really about. It wasn't anti-trans. It was with some people. There are transphobic people out there. I don't doubt that for a moment.
Well,
there are always. But here's the point I'm going to make: is that of course there are, but actually the core debate for me certainly, and I think for you, was that you wanted to protect women's rights to fairness, equality and safety. And particularly in the sport issue, but also in the case of, for example, the male rapist in Scotland, who suddenly, having been convicted, puts his hand up and says, I'm now a woman, and gets put in a women's prison, which led to the series of events that led to Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, actually having to resign because people were like, you're a woman, you're allowing this? You're putting the fox in the hen coop to attack other women because he just put his hand up to game the system? That is what offended people. You put your hand up. Very polite of you, by the way. Thank you. What would you like to say?
I'm just confused because I was told I was being brought on to discuss a free speech issue and an issue about whether or not it should be okay to incite violence against a protected minority group like transgender people. But we seem to now be talking about whether or not it's okay to be transphobic.
Well, no, because the whole... Let me explain that. No, hang on. Let me just explain, because Laurie's raised a point. The point is that Graham Linehan's become the poster boy, for abuse and shaming and attacks and vilification
He does do that a lot.
and cancellation. He has become the poster boy for this stuff for many years. It's ruined his life. It ruined his marriage. It ruined his career. And at the core of his argument was that biological men who identify as trans women should not be in women's spaces. And I agree with him. And Malcolm Gladwell agrees with him. And Riley Gaines agrees with him. Now, we have got...
Can I jump in?
Well, I was going to bring in Blaire, because Blaire, you're a YouTube commentator, but you're trans. What do you think about this? I mean, were you offended by Graham Linehan's tweets?
Notice the shift that happens right here. The conversation was originally framed as being about free speech, specifically whether Graham Linehan's tweets crossed into inciting violence against a protected group. Blaire tries to hold the discussion to that actual question, pointing out that free speech protections exist precisely to cover speech people find offensive. That is the whole point of the principle. That is a substantive, defensible position on the actual topic at hand. But the conversation does not stay there. Once Blaire mentions being transgender in the context of answering the original question, the discussion pivots almost entirely away from the free speech issue and toward questioning Blaire's own identity directly. That shift matters because it changes what the segment is actually about. What started as a debate over free speech principles turns into something closer to a cross-examination of one guest's personal identity, live on air, which is a very different conversation than the one Blaire says she was invited to have.
Not at all. First of all, I have to say that it was fascinating listening to you guys talk about free speech as a concept, like as Brits, coming from an American. You know, when she said that she didn't know that free speech covered offensive speech, that's absolutely what it covers. That's the most important part of what it covers.
That's not what I said.
And what did you say exactly then?
I said that I wasn't aware that it was only people who have particular bigoted views who are protected by the notion of free speech. The notion of free speech should protect.
I don't think that's how it's being applied because he was arrested.
No one's argued that. But the actual point of free speech is you have to tolerate and allow people to say things you don't like. That is the point of free speech. 100%. Unless you're actually inciting a crime, and nobody could have read that Graham Linehan tweet and not thought he was just cracking a rather crass joke.
I think a lot of people did think that.
If anything,
well, Blaire's a trans woman. Why don't we let her answer?
I'm also transgender.
I know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Which trans are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm non-binary.
What does that mean?
I'm a non-binary person. I use they, them person.
So
sorry, are we going to spend... do we really want to spend the rest of this discussing my personal
You're the one who mentioned it. I didn't even know.
Well, now you know.
That's a nightmare.
Okay, so now I know. I'm just asking you what that means.
Like, do you really want to discuss this?
You raised the subject of yourself being trans. I'm simply asking,
Can
what
I
does
finish
that...
my point?
No, wait
It's
one
always a
second.
non-binary
Wait 1 second.
person
It's actually really
speaking over a
interesting.
transsexual.
It's really interesting to me. You raised it, not me. I didn't even know. So now you've raised it. What does that actually mean? What do you mean you're non-binary?
Are you really just going to...
Can you explain it?
Are you going to cut Blaire off now?
I'm just asking you to explain. I'll come back to Blaire in a moment.
Well, you were the one that cut me off, sis. But I will say that...
Hang on one second, Blaire.
I was...
Sorry, Blaire, wait 1 second. I just want to ask, what do you mean by non-binary?
When I say I'm non-binary, I'm expressing my identity in a way that I have a right to do. I'm sorry?
What's your sexuality?
My sexuality.
Yes.
This doesn't have to have anything to do with my
Actually,
sexuality.
the UK government now says that people are male or female. The British Prime Minister says people are male or female.
I don't think the UK government should have the final say on how I express myself.
Well, they determine the laws of the country.
Treated.
I'm just curious what you mean by non-binary. What does that mean?
I'm curious. Firstly...
What are your pronouns?
They, them.
What does that mean? There's only one of you.
What does they, them... actually, they, them has been... The collective they has been used to refer to individual people for centuries and still is. So, I mean, if you don't understand basic grammar, that's on you.
I don't really understand.
You do.
I don't understand. I've got to be honest with you. I don't understand the concept of what non-binary means, or why you would use a plural pronoun to describe a singular person. That makes sense. To me, this is the problem with the whole woke thing. Is that it's inexplicable. Nobody really knows what it means. I don't know what you mean by non-binary they, them. There's one of you sitting here, and you look to me female. You're a female?
Okay.
Are you a female?
If you don't understand what non-binary means...
Are you a female?
If you don't understand what non-binary means...
I don't.
Then I'm not sure you're in a position to lead a debate.
So just tell me.
Tell me.
But if you can't explain it in simple language, then
what is it?
What's the point?
Well, explain what
I can tell you exactly what being a transsexual is.
It means that my gender identity is something other than man or woman. I'm a non-binary individual.
But you accept you're a female?
I don't think that I'm here to discuss the contents of my
You raised
this
this whole thing. I didn't mention anything about what you were. You did. You said, I'm trans.
This has really become uncomfortably personal.
Has it? You said it, not me.
If you think this is uncomfortably personal, try undressing in a locker room with a 6'4" naked man.
Right, exactly. That's the point of this. It's like, what is uncomfortable?
We're having a conversation here. And I'm slightly offended because no one asked me my pronouns. So.
Exactly. I think we should get rid of all pronouns. I think they're ridiculous. Blaire, let me bring Blaire. Let me bring Blaire back. You'll be very patient, Blaire. Over to you. You're a trans woman. So let's get back to you.
So
you weren't offended by what Graham Linehan...
Let's look at what actually happened in this segment, because the framing matters as much as the content. The discussion opened on solid ground. Riley Gaines and Piers discussing Malcolm Gladwell's changed position on trans athletes in women's sports. That part of the conversation was relatively clear-cut. Riley clarified that when she and Piers used the word superior to describe male biology in athletic contexts, they meant specific physical attributes, speed, strength, lung capacity, not a broader claim about men being superior to women overall. That is a reasonable clarification, and it kept the sports fairness conversation grounded in specifics rather than sweeping generalizations. Where the segment shifted was the move into the Graham Linehan free speech question, and this is where things became harder to follow. The stated premise for bringing Blaire into the conversation was to discuss whether Linehan's tweets constituted incitement against transgender people, a specific answerable question about the boundaries of free speech. Blaire's first response was actually direct and on topic, that free speech exists specifically to protect speech people find offensive, and that this principle applies broadly, not selectively. That is a coherent position, whether or not you agree with it. But the conversation did not continue on that thread. Instead, once Blaire identified as transgender and then clarified as non-binary, the question shifted almost entirely toward asking her to explain and justify her own identity in real time on live television, rather than returning to the original free speech question she was there to discuss. Piers pressed repeatedly for a definition of non-binary, questioned the use of they and them pronouns, and asked directly whether she considered herself female. Blaire pointed out accurately that the collective use of they for an individual has existed in English for centuries, a point that did not fully land in the exchange as it continued. What is worth naming here is not whether Blaire gave a satisfying answer in the moment. Live television rarely allows for the kind of careful, unhurried explanation that questions about identity and language actually deserve. What is worth naming is that the conversation itself changed shape midstream from a debate about the limits of free speech and incitement to a debate about whether one guest's identity needed to be justified to the panel's satisfaction before her original point could even be addressed. Those are two very different conversations, and conflating them made it much harder for anyone watching to walk away with real clarity on either one. Riley Gaines' portion of the segment, by contrast, stayed focused in specific biology, athletic performance, competitive fairness, concrete terms that could be discussed and clarified without turning into a referendum on anyone's personal identity. That contrast is instructive. When a debate stays anchored to specific, answerable questions, it tends to produce actual clarity. When it drifts into demanding someone justify who they are on the spot, it tends to produce exactly the kind of chaotic, talked-over exchange that closed out this segment. This is the Charlotte Wire, where we show you exactly how these conversations unfold, unedited and in full context. If this mattered to you, stay with us because there is more of this coming.